You know, since the turn of the century, television shows have lost a few things. Competent writers, characters you care about, stories that give you a reason to come back, and most importantly, a sense of humor. With Hollywood more concerned with pushing the message, there's no room to manufacture a joke that might generate a laugh at the expense of a random person's feelings. It might explain why older shows have never been more in demand. They're generated from a time when society wasn't as soft as one as Rosie O'Donnell's neck rolls. With the exception of South Park, no one's attack cultures on an even playing field anymore. Which begs the question, why bother watching? Well, based on ratings today, most don't. Take a show like The Acolyte. If it were around in the 70s, it would be off the air in 2 weeks into existence. Speaking of the 70s, two shows that dominated ratings for most of the decade, All in the Family and Sanford and Son. The number 1 and 2 shows of weekly primetime. They were complete opposites in many areas, from skin color, living conditions, economic standings, but one thing they had in common, bigoted old men. Archie Bunker would always speak his mind, even if it were hurting another person's feelings, much to the joy of those watching. Fred Sanford was no different, quick to share his thoughts on culture, religion, and sexual preference. So today we will focus on one show in particular, Sanford and Son. A show that was actually a remake from the British sitcom Steptoe and Son. A successful show in its own right. The best move producers ever made was bringing in Red Fox to play the lead. Damon Wilson, who played Lamont Sanford, as well as the theme song composer Quincy Jones, both said the same thing. You can't put Red Fox on national TV. Producers believe Red Fox can maintain his edgy comedy while cleaning up his language for a television audience. And they were right. Sanford and Son debuted on January 14, 1972, and rose up the rating charts faster than a producer from Disney can spend $100 million. After just 14 episodes, Sanford and Son became the 6th most watched show. Unlike The Rings of Power, Sanford and Son viewership numbers continued to rise. And the formula was very simple. The show was frickin' funny. The writers had a freedom unlike any writer in Hollywood has seen in the last decade. The only message Sanford and Son wanted to get was that of humor, and that it can come from any environment. On paper, the premise of a father and son running a junkyard doesn't exactly scream must-see TV. But the cast makes it work. The core and the heart of the show is Fred and Lamont, a father and son combo, but act more like a married couple at times. Nathaniel Taylor, who played the coolest character on TV in the 70s, named Rollo Lawson, said it best. The show transcended race. The show was timeless. And the show was relatable. We've all had family members that might drive us crazy. So much it's like doing a cross-country trip, sharing the back seat with Jar Jar Binks. Yet they always end up with a laugh and a hug at the end. One thing that separates Sanford and Son from its original counterpart, Steptoe and Son, was the cast. Red Fox brought in a lot of his comic friends who knew how to be funny. With a supporting cast line as long as the Titanic passenger list, episodes would never grow stale or repetitive. And the many different cultures represented in the show, it would make Disney jealous. Julio, the Puerto Rican that was the nicest neighbor. Achu, a Japanese friend of Lamont that Fred had enough bigotry jokes that would make Dave Chappelle blush.
Oh my God!
Arabs, the homeless, Jewish, even El Blanco. Everyone was a target. Fred goes so far as to mock Lamont with his new African customs one time. Or when Bubba sees Lamont and Rollo enter a bar called the Gay Blade, Fred might have to deal with his son being gay. But in all situations, it was all done in good humor. Something sincerely missing in most shows today. But perhaps the greatest part of Sanford and Son wasn't even on the show at the beginning, and I'm talking about Aunt Esther. LaWanda Page was a real-life childhood friend of Red Fox. She was so impactful in her role that the mere mention of the name Esther creates more laughs than a Donald Trump debate. Aunt Esther was a Bible-carrying, insult-heaving intimidator that was only one brave enough to constantly go head-to-head with Fred. She had more appearances in the show than anyone not named Fred or Lamont, which speaks volume to how much she was loved by fans and the cast. Isn't it amazing how in a time where roles were cast to the best person, we found memorable actors that gave us legendary performances? Cultures, women, men, they were all present and not forced to cast based on genders or agendas or identity politics. And the show would draw 15 million views a week. And it was a very simple reason. They gave the audience what they wanted. That's something missing in some shows and movies today. They produce things that get less views than the real Critical Drinkers videos, just for the sake to push for something a very small minority care about. And most of these people don't even care about the shows. If Fred Sanford was here today, I knew one thing he would love: Godzilla -1, because it was made for fans and cared about its audience, something we very rarely seen the last decade. Anyways, that's all I got for today. Go away now.